Hi, I'm Andrew Dolworth from the Champion Briefs. We're here at the Champion Briefs Institute today for a very special round between Megan West and Grant Sinnott and Doug Miller and Abraham Fraifeld. The resolution today is, do the benefits of American drone strikes against foreign targets outweigh the harms? Affirming and speaking first will be Fraifeld and Miller, and negating and speaking second will be West and Sinnott. This round today is meant to be a flow-based round. We've told both sides that they should be appealing to a flow judge, one that prioritizes weighing and extensions over the lay appeal or emotional appeal. So look for those types of things in today's round, really focusing on the flow. We're just going to get started in a couple of seconds as soon as both teams are ready, and it should be a fantastic round. Oh yeah.
All right. No good go? Okay. Anyway, you're not ready? Camera good? We affirm contention 1. Drones have geopolitical and humanitarian benefits. In Afghanistan, drones are alleviating the burden placed on troops. According to NPR, their deployment will facilitate withdrawal from Afghanistan. Spencer Ackerman of Wired magazine points out that drones will remain flying over Afghanistan post-withdrawal because the Afghan army lacks sufficient air power for strikes with the Taliban. The impact of withdrawal is tremendous. It will protect American soldiers, save hundreds of billions of dollars, and contribute to Afghan stability. Psychology Today notes that troop deployments have blurred the line between aid workers and forces. Consequently, the Taliban is increasingly targeting USAID officers who play an essential role in improving Afghan quality of life and ensuring economic growth. The end of the war zone mentality will set Central Asia up to succeed in the long term. Additionally, American withdrawal will force India and Pakistan to cooperate, improving relations between nuclear-armed enemies. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, there may be hope for improved relations because Pakistanis are increasingly recognizing the serious cost of return to chaos in Afghanistan after U.S. withdrawal in 2014. Collaborative efforts and development could serve as a starting point for improving relations in other areas, and Afghanistan is central to Indo-Pakistani cooperation. Next, U.S. drone usage will allow the United States to continue to power project. According to Anna Murley of U.S. News, American military remains the overburdened and dangerously overstretched. Troops are exhausted after back-to-back tours. Drones are increasingly combating this effect. According to the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. plans to reduce the size of the Army by 14%. The Pentagon sees drones as a part of the effort to offset cutbacks that some critics say will undercut the U.S. global dominance. The report furthers, the Pentagon's plan to expand its network of drones in a realignment means to project U.S. power even as it cuts back unconventional forces. The plan calls for a 30% increase in armed unmanned aircraft. The continuation of power projection is essential to achieving global interests. David Talbot of Salon magazine notes, the country's greatest foreign policy disasters occurred because the U.S. government failed to assert its power. Bush aborted Desert Storm before it could reach Baghdad, and when Clinton took office, looked the other way with a genocidal rampage, took the lives of 1 million people in Rwanda. Now that American casualties and military overstretch are not problems, humanitarian disasters are far less likely to occur. Contention 2, drones hinder terrorist operations. Strikes are a game changer for the war on terror for 3 reasons. First, Jane Miner of The New Yorker reports that as a result of drone strikes, militants are forced to operate far more cautiously, which diverts from planning new attacks. Patrick Johnson of the RAND Corporation found in a study, a drone strike is associated with a 22% point reduction in IED attacks. Moreover, CNN reports drone strikes carried out in 2010 coincided with an almost 50% drop in suicide attacks across Pakistan. Second, drones reduce terrorist lethality. Michael Evans of the London Times writes, one of the consequences of predator attacks has been that Al-Qaeda has had to give up traditional terrorist training camps. Sending recruits into the open has become too risky. In addition, Daniel Byman of Georgetown University explains, the number of skilled terrorists is quite limited. Bomb makers and trainers are scarce and they need months to gain enough expertise. He furthers that when these individuals are hit and hit again, it is possible to exhaust the terrorist group's bench. Johnston writes, the lethality of militant attacks declines by more than 16% as a result of drone strikes in a given week. And Bynum concludes that after a targeted killing against Hamas, the lethality rate begins to fall, dropping from 3.9 deaths per attack in 2001 to 0.11 in 2005. Third, drones kill terrorist leaders. Data from Peter Bergen of the New America Foundation indicated that upwards of 70 terrorist leaders have been killed by drones. Johnston found that because killing leadership results in struggles with terrorist organizations, a loss of organized planning ability, and a loss of morale, decapitation raised the predicted probability of victory by 46 percentage points. Rowlands and King of Carleton University confirmed this results in an inability to attack. For hub-and-spoke organizations, killing of the leader is associated with the decline in attacks by almost 90% in some cases. Biden historically verifies the effectiveness of targeted killings. Israel found that eventually, after strikes against Palestinian cell leaders, there was a bottom to the barrel and that less skilled, less motivated people took over. An example of a terrorist group decimated by drones is Al-Qaeda. According to the LA Times, thanks to drone strikes and other operations, Al-Qaeda has been eviscerated.
Pakistan 50% reduction rates. Yeah, just word for word. I just didn't know here. Let's do that. 2010 to over the course of 2010.
Resolved. The benefits of American drone strikes against foreign targets outweigh the harms. Contention 1. Drone strikes create problems in Pakistan. Subpoint A. Invasion of sovereignty has corroded the political process and destabilized the country. Boyle from International Affairs in 2013 explains that the popular perception that a government is powerless to stop drone attacks on its territory can be crippling to the incumbent regime and can embolden its domestic rivals to challenge it through violence. Pakistani President Asif al-Zardari described the political costs of drones sufficiently, saying that drone attacks are counterproductive and difficult to explain by a democratically elected government. It is creating a credibility gap. Zenko from the Council on Foreign Relations of 2013 explains the impact of this gap. In countries where drone strikes have occurred, some State Department and U.S. aid officials strongly believe that the broadly unpopular attacks overshadow and diminish the effectiveness of civilian assistance programs. One former senior military official closely involved in U.S. targeted killings argued that drone strikes are just a signal of arrogance that will boomerang against America, while former U.S. Ambassador to Pakistan Cameron Munter explains that in Pakistan the continuation of drone strikes has exposed fault lines between the army and the democratically elected parliament, which in April 2012 demanded an immediate cessation of drone attacks inside the territorial borders of Pakistan. Journalist Fred Brampton explains that as a result of our drone strikes, we are destabilizing the government of Pakistan to the point where the New York Times has speculated that there could be a military coup by anti-U.S. junior military officers in Pakistan, running the risk that people who hate us could take over the government there. Subpoint B, anti-American sentiment. Brampton writes, President Obama is more hated in Pakistan than was President Bush. Right now, the Pew poll shows that 69% of the people in Pakistan regard us as their enemy because President Obama has quadrupled and quintupled the drone strikes that has made us hated in Pakistan. This has two impacts. First, increased terrorism. As a result of our drone strikes, our enemies are actually increasing in number. The Pakistan Taliban is not only 4 to 5 times larger, but the Pakistani intelligence agency about a year ago issued a report saying that they were a bigger threat to Pakistan than ever. Our foreign policies are actually harming U.S. national security. They are exponentially increasing the numbers of people who want to kill Americans. Second, drones increase the threat of Pakistan's nuclear stockpile. These drone strikes have alienated the population of Pakistan, which Ambassador Ann Patterson, our former U.S. ambassador, gave as the main reason why the Pakistani government is refusing to cooperate with us on either nuclear proliferation or safeguarding their nuclear materials. They're destabilizing their critical country in Pakistan, and they're making cooperation on Afghanistan or securing nuclear weapons or anything else impossible. The magnitude of this situation could not be greater. The Harvard Belfer Center Nuclear Threat Initiative points out that Pakistan's nuclear stockpile is the fastest growing in the world and the least secure. Richard North furthers that there is no country with more active terrorists than Pakistan, and Al-Qaeda has long been obsessed with nuclear weapons, with Pakistan as its focus. with a recent Senate Foreign Relations Committee study estimating that there is a 70% chance of nuclear, biological, or chemical attack in the next decade. This threat could not be more critical, and it is drone strikes that have made it a reality. By increasing the chance for complete government collapse, quadrupling the number of terrorists in the state, and eroding relations to the point where securing the weapons is no longer an option, drone strikes clearly do more harm than good. Contention 2, drone strikes create problems in Yemen. The Arab Times reports on Yemen's economy that Yemen's economy is on the brink of collapse after 4 months of anti-regime protests and a political deadlock that has dragged the country into deadly tribal feuds. The crisis has swollen Yemen's budgetary deficit and is driving off urgently needed foreign aid. Prices of foodstuffs rose at rates ranging between 40 and 60%, while prices of drinking water have risen by 202%, and the price of transportation by 60% because the prices of petroleum products like gasoline and diesel has reached 900%. Boone of the Christian Science Monitor in 2011 writes that previous strikes in Yemen had devastating consequences, killing innocent people and adding to the economic trouble and social turmoil of a country in the midst of a civil war. Attacks have been carried out against oil and power infrastructure, demanding that the Yemeni government stop cooperating with U.S. drone and missile strikes. Hudson, Associate Director of the School of Middle East Studies, furthers. One form of blowback deals with the increased ability of AQAP to recruit new members, especially those who have had friends or family killed in the attacks. And Yemen, the Arab world's poorest country and an increasing stronghold of al-Qaeda, poses massive dangers to the country, the region, and the wider world. Therefore, negate.
All right, let's take a look at your first contention talking about Pakistan. Now, the whole argument here is that there's going to be like a massive sort of military coup and things along those lines. How is there any empirical evidence of this when actually for the first time in the history of the country of Pakistan that there has been a peaceful transition from one democratically elected government to another?
Okay, the fact that there's been a peaceful transition in the government is not specifically the impact that we're trying to gain off this.
Yeah, no, it actually just empirically proves the impact you're trying to gain is not possible.
No, because the problem is that the empirics that you're giving in your study are not looking at a specific length of time, and we're going to show you, as Grant's showing you in his next speech, that there's actually been an increase in attacks in Pakistan since the drone strikes have started, from 150 attacks in Pakistan to over 1,900, so 4 times in size over the last few years.
Got a question for me?
Yeah. Can you tell me a place where drone strikes have actually statistically decreased terrorism?
Actually statistically decreased terrorism, like...
Sorry for the redundancy.
No, that's quite all right. In Afghanistan, we give you like tons of numbers in contention, in particular, like a 90% reduction in attacks. Additionally, I think CNN actually points out there's like a 65% reduction in attacks as well.
Okay.
We'll defend those numbers. Like,
okay.
I'm fine with doing that one. If you want to engage in that debate, let's go for it.
Okay, we will, don't worry.
Okay. In terms of your Pakistan contention, like, who is it that, okay. The argument you're making is essentially that Pakistan is going to like start giving nuclear materials to people, correct?
Well, no, not necessarily. That Pakistan has a nuclear stockpile that they are willing to use, and the drone strikes are not only going to destabilize the individuals who would utilize that stockpile.
See, that's not the link story that you try and actually tell in case. Because the link story you're trying to tell in case says that like Al-Qaeda is going to get a hold of those. I'm wondering where you're making the connection between
Right, there's one place that happens in the case, but I'm also telling you in the second half of the Pakistan contention that there's multiple of these groups that are specifically watching the nuclear weapons that can actually utilize them when it's decreased by these terrorist threats that are happening within the country because of the drones by U.S. strikes. Can I ask you a question now? Okay, so how do we obtain our information for these drone strikes in Afghanistan? Like, how do we get the intelligence to carry out the drone strikes?
A wide variety of things. One from people on the ground.
Okay, wait, stop there. That's the only answer I actually need.
Oh yeah, but too bad there's more answers than that.
Right, but that's the only
You're going to have also aerial drones. You're going to have international cooperation with folks.
But
you
I
have
want to ask
surveillance. You
you
have a wide variety
about
of
the first thing.
Yeah, I got that.
The main reason is that we have troops on the ground. So if we are pulling out of Afghanistan, And
not because we have troops on the ground, in terms of like talking to the local populace.
Right, but
Those are very
is it
different
not
things.
American troops on the ground in Afghanistan that actually obtained some of that information utilized for drone strikes?
Yeah, and the fact that Obama's withdrawal plan is going to leave somewhere in the neighborhood of like 15 to 20,000 like advisors
But
on the
not
ground
the
there.
same advisors that have previously been there obtaining the intelligence.
Nah, yeah, actually
we're
we're leaving the like intelligence folks and removing combat
Okay,
troops.
if you have a card that says that, we'd like to hear it.
I'd like to know CNN stats. What you say in the video?
Yeah, it's
Kind of a rank program.
Oh, can I read it?
sorry, yeah, some of the parts.
I just want to
Yeah.
Oh, it's the actor. It's like outside back.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Alright, that was 21 seconds. Down. Everyone ready? Okay. Start with our opponent's first contention, which discusses Pakistan. Their subpoint A, they're talking about sovereignty and how we're crippling the regime because we're causing a credibility gap. The problem with this argument is it's basically outdated. The idea that there's a credibility gap between the Pakistani government and like their people, and that there's going to be a military revolt, is simply not true anymore. The Global Post reported in 2013 that the government announced that Pakistan will go to the polls development that will likely prevent the army from engineering a coup if it was ever intended to happen in the first place. So at the point where our opponent's argument is outdated, you're not going to be evaluating it. Moreover, the probability of a military coup because of drone strikes is incredibly unlikely because, as ABC News reports, the Pakistani military has actually consented to drone strikes, which means that if the people were going to turn to somebody to perpetrate a coup against the government of Pakistan, it wouldn't be the military because they support drone strike also. Moreover, there are other reasons why a coup would occur that have nothing to do with anti-American, that have nothing to do with this credibility gap. The Arab News reports that youth unemployment in Pakistan is reaching 35%. So it makes sense that if a coup is going to happen, it's not going to be because of drones. They have to give you the uniqueness in this argument if they're going to be achieving any sort of offense. Go to subpoint B, which discusses the idea of anti-American sentiment. First, Christine Fair of Georgetown University explains that only 35% of those who are questioned in Pakistan know what the drone program is, which means that they're not going to be substantially increasing the threat against the Pakistani state. Moreover, Amitai Etzioni of George Washington University explains that realistically, the link between drones and anti-American sentiment is not there. She finds that in Pakistan, the anti-American sentiment began to increase between 2010, 2011, 2012 as drone strikes declined, which means that in fact, this relationship is not actually causal. Let's go to their impacts. Their first impact is they're saying that now there's a bigger terror threat to Pakistan. Once again, this evidence is very, very outdated. According to the Washington Post, Al-Qaeda is very likely to lose operational capability within Pakistan in the next 2 years. And the evidence we read in case indicates that Al-Qaeda is no longer capable of carrying out a mass attack. This post dates our opponent's evidence. You should prefer it. Al-Qaeda's core in Pakistan has been absolutely decimated, and according to the National Journal, the Taliban is no longer relevant. Let's go to the subpoint, the second impact, which is their stockpile, to which we have a number of responses. Number one, the Pakistani Times says that the international community actually supports Pakistan and that Pakistan is cooperating sufficiently. Moreover, the UN's nuclear watchdog says that Pakistan's nuclear stockpile might be like the least safe in the world, but that doesn't mean that it's not safe. In fact, they say that it's an incredibly safe stockpile and that there's no threat of a nuclear takeover. Then they say that 70% probability of like a chemical, nuclear, biological attack. Go to contention 2, which discusses Yemen. We have a number of responses. Once again, this argument is outdated. They're talking about how Yemen is on the brink of collapse, and they're trying to associate that somehow with drones. This is an incoherent link. They're talking about like massive price increases. The problem with this is that existed independent of drones. This happened because the military invaded the south of the country. Obviously, a civil war is going to cause these kinds of impacts. Moreover, they're just associating themselves with bad news that have nothing to do with drones, and in fact, drones have actually played a very key role in increasing Yemenite stability. Andrew Terrell of the Strategic Studies Institute explains. President Hadi unleashed a strong military offensive against AQAP, which seized large provinces, and they were administering them in the Taliban way. And if the Yemenite military had been defeated in the confrontation, the outcome could have well led to the collapse of the Yemenite government and emergence of anarchy. However, Terrell goes on to explain that drones were widely reported in the United States and international press as helping to enable the government victory in southern Yemen. This is one of the biggest impacts in the round. The reason why Yemen didn't collapse
is drones, according to the terror evidence. Moreover, William Carroll of the LA Times explains that the Yemenite troops and southern tribesmen drove Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula out of the key parts of the country, which means our opponents are not going to be able to generate any offense off of AQAP. Thus, I urge you to affirm. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Opponents? Wes?
Start out with their first contention. The internal link to this argument is going to be stability, and the only way they say that they gain access to stability is decreasing terrorism. So if we show that there's been an increase in terrorism in Afghanistan because of drone strikes, they're not going to be gaining access to this argument. Look to the fact that from 2010 to 2012, the years we had the most drone strikes, we saw an 80% increase in IED attacks. This statistically led to 1,900 more civilian casualties. And moreover, that's not even including the civilian casualties that were happening to the people of Afghanistan. That's just United States troops. The Ken Soffer quote they read you talking about like Al-Qaeda outside of Afghanistan doesn't take into effect a couple of things. First, it doesn't look at domestic terrorism. Second, it only looks at 2011 to 2012. That's going to be a huge problem because those are the years that we were decreasing drone strikes in several countries, so they're not even going to be causing a correlative link here. At that point where they show you no evidence in the case, when we increase drone strikes, we actually see an empirical decrease, not just some predicted decrease by Johnston, they're going to be losing the round. But let's look at Johnston first. Johnston concedes that there is no causality and that he can't control for the long-term effect. Remember, he only looks 1 week after drone strikes. That's why empirically you're going to see the terrorism increases in these countries. First, you can look to the fact that drone strikes have accelerated attack. Byman writes that while terrorist retaliates when their leaders are killed following drone strikes, in fact, groups accelerate attacks and ramped up its campaign. That's going to take out their author. Remember, they give you something talking about Hamas from the 5.4 to like 1 point something decrease, but that's not going to like impact in today's real world. And that's going to be the same for this hub and spoke card talking about a 90% decrease for 2 reasons. First, look to the AIE. They specifically tell you that they're no longer a hub and spokes organization because of what drone strikes have done. By decimating the upper level, we've actually spread them out and caused them to be more dangerous because now, as that study goes on to point out in the paragraph above that he fails to read to you, there's a 2.6 times more likely when they don't have this kind of pyramid-like structure that we've destroyed with drone strikes. Then you're going to be turning this argument because, in fact, when you destroy an organization, you actually see more attacks. In fact, that's empirically quantified by the fact that IED attacks increased 20% after new leaders were gone. Remember, their entire case is predicated on the fact that terrorism decreases. So I can just read a bunch of generic reasons why terrorism is bad, or increases because of drone strikes. Then go down to the fact that you're actually going to see that drone strikes increase the probability an organization will survive. Janet Jordan of UChicago writes that 53% of decapitated organizations fall apart, while 70% of groups that have not experienced decapitation no longer exist. The rate of decline is almost 20% less for decapitated organizations. Prefer this over the Johnston analysis because remember, he's not looking at a big enough sample size. Then you're going to find that Peter Bergman explains that violence has gone up dramatically since the program began, from 150 terrorist incidents in 2004 to a peak of 1,916 in 2009 in Pakistan. When we started to decrease, we actually saw a 38% reduction in attacks from 2010 to 2012. Then go to Afghanistan. The number of suicide attacks tripled in the first half of 2010 compared to the same period in 2009 when we were increasing drone strikes. Then, even if they show terrorism has decreased in the region, it has increased globally. Michael Sugar of Georgetown writes that Al-Qaeda is more dangerous today than it was in 2011 because now 9/11 has activities outside of the countries of Pakistan and Afghanistan, now operates in Yemen, Iraq, Lebanon, Somalia, and North Africa, so the platform on which attacks can be launched has grown considerably. In fact, a new study out internationally reports that terrorist attacks have gone up 460%. Nowhere in their case do they prove a decrease in terrorism. They just have the Johnston study and other studies predicting a decrease in terrorism. Their case doesn't control this internal link. Let's go to extensions. He makes a horrible flaw with his response to the second contention. You're going to be extending an analysis that says, we blew up a pipeline, they blew up a pipeline because of drone strikes. That destabilized the Yemenis economy. Extend the Arab postcard. Those are the impacts of the pipeline being gone. And at that point, he just reads you cards that are he reads a card that literally says, the American news reports that the attacks were good. That doesn't mean they were actually good. Look to the evidence we give you that says they've gone from hundreds of people there to thousands of militants trying to fight against us. Just the American news saying we're doing a good job isn't going to be a statistical analysis that you prefer in today's round. Then he reads cards saying that we pushed them out. But remember, the only reason they have to be pushed out is because drone strikes created the threat. That argument's going to hold true in Pakistan, but we'll make extensions out of that later. but you should extend the 74% of us view us as an enemy. You should also extend a card that says because of drone strikes, you've seen a quadrupling in the number of the Taliban attacks, which Penn software doesn't look at Taliban drones.
Wait, actually, do you want to? Okay.
I'll leave you the first one.
Okay. Let's talk about some correlative numbers. You say that there's been a quadrupling in terrorist attacks in the world since 2001, right?
What car are you talking about?
The 460% increase, the new study.
Yeah.
Right, so all of that happened in Iraq between 04 and 07, and terrorism began to decline in 07, right? That's what the evidence says, at least.
No, I've read, there's other pieces of evidence I read. The Peter Bergman quote, which we read in case, specifically tells you, in the countries we drone strike in, when we increase drone strikes, we say increase in terrorist attacks. So
Where-
could you show me,
no, that's
could you just show me in a
The
country,
Bergen evidence, no.
wait, let me ask you a question. Can you show me in a single country, this is what Ms. West asked, where when we increased drone strikes, we saw a decrease in terrorism?
The CNN evidence says that in 2010, when drone strikes peaked, we saw a 50% reduction in terrorism in Pakistan. The evidence
In
from Johnston,
Pakistan.
the evidence
Wait,
from Johnston
can I
talks about
first-
systemically across the globe when we use drone strikes.
After a week,
terrorism.
after a week,
And
yeah.
in Yemen,
So-
we saw that that Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula was able to be defeated
Abraham.
because we were constantly hitting them and invading them
You
with the
don't
military.
prove they're defeated. You just read cards from the United States military.
No,
saying
no.
that they're like,
No,
now let me
you
talk.
really try to explain, really
You're
quick.
talking-
You
no.
try to spin that like a completely
I've
wrong
read
way.
the cards. I've read the
It's
cards.
like the international
They
press
have the same blocks.
Right. The international press says that the Yemenite military was able to defeat Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula because when
And that's where my argument comes into play. The only reason they were a threat was because of our drone strikes. That's it. Yes.
No, they were a threat
It's a
because
debate.
Yemen
Let me
was a
ask,
safe
can
haven.
you show me, empirically, where terrorist attacks have gone down? You
I
read
gave you.
50% in Pakistan in 2010, correct?
I gave you one, yeah.
And wait,
I gave
when
you another.
did we peak? In 2012. In the beginning, I'm sorry, 2010. Was it in the beginning of 2012 that we had the most drone strikes, or at the end of 2012?
It was in the end.
Could you show me the evidence?
The,
that says
yeah,
that?
the evidence we read from CNN says that.
Okay, and wait, was it a 50% reduction in just that 1 year?
Yeah.
So like, is like pissing on a forest fire like going to solve the problem?
I'm not sure what that means.
So like, our evidence says that you've gone from 150 to 1,916 attacks over the long run. So you just saying that there was a 50% reduction in 1 year still means there was a massive
So let me
increase because
explain.
of drone strikes.
When we disrupt the safe haven in Iraq and we disrupt the safe haven in Afghanistan, they have to go somewhere like the Fatah. That's why there was an increase in terrorist
But then I
attacks in
specifically
Pakistan,
read you the-
coinciding with
Oh,
invasions
but-
in safe havens.
but if you look
So
at
when we drone
Afghanistan,
strike
you see
and we
a
decimate their
massive
core, they're no longer going to be a
Then
threat
why
to
are they
Pakistan
increasing in
anymore.
Afghanistan, these so-hard safe havens
What?
that they're running from? I read you specific evidence. I read you 2 pieces of evidence that says there's an 80% increase in the IED attacks. Then I read you the thing that says that there's been a threefold increase in
I'd like to see
suicide.
that just because like I want to contextualize it. I want to know like over like what kind of period it was.
It was from 2010 to 2012. There was an 80% increase in IED attacks in Afghanistan.
Periods in which we were decreasing our drone strikes.
No, in Afghanistan, we had 416 drone strikes this year, which is more than we had in Pakistan over the last 8
Okay,
years.
that
So
was
I don't
this
know
year.
where you're saying.
That was this year. I'm telling you that we decreased our attacks in Pakistan, which is where these terrorists were recruited.
I'm
and
talking
going
about in
in.
Afghanistan. You're completely
Okay, do you have a question?
not responding to my evidence. My evidence is talking about in Afghanistan, and my evidence is talking about Pakistan. We saw a 32% reduction in suicide bombings and attacks in Pakistan from 2010 to 2012 when we decreased drone strikes, and we saw an empirical increase of 80%.
Maybe that's because we decimated the group with drone strikes so much that
Suicide attacks, according to your own
That's
evidence, are the most complicated form of attack that terrorism
Right, which-
perform out. So
which is why there was
obviously
a
they're not
decrease.
devastated. There wasn't. There was an increase.
Can I see the evidence of the 80%?
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
It's taking forever.
with 1 minute 15, which means we have 25 seconds remaining.
Three key issues in today's round. The first of those is going to be on the issue of Yemen. Abe does an amazing job on this. There's no real good extension of this whatsoever, talking about how all the impacts from Yemen are specific to the civil war that was going on there before drone strikes ever happened. They cannot extend a single argument about this. Additionally, extend across the fact that Abe tells you that the drone strikes actually decrease the chances of the Yemeni government falling. So if you're going to be voting on Yemen, you're totally voting pro. Second argument is going to be terrorism. A couple key things in here that really don't get answered very well. First is going to be the lethality argument. It's going to be even if you see attacks increasing, you're seeing the number of people actually dying from them go down. That's the binding evidence talking about the training is going down. The people who actually know how to make the bombs are no longer there. The benches are exhausted. Additionally, the MSNBC evidence from Case is really good on the point that Al-Qaeda, even if it wants to, can't do a major attack anymore. Also, in terms of the decapitation argument, you're going to see the Jordan evidence that they talked about. It ties a whole enormous amount of selection bias. It cherry picks scenarios, doesn't actually talk about a whole lot of things that don't support its conclusions. Whereas the Johnson evidence, even if it is only some short-term stuff, looks at a wider variety of scenarios, and that's going to be why you're going to prefer it. So in terms of terrorism, even if you think that the number of attacks goes up, lethality goes down. In the end, not as many people die. That's why you're voting pro. Now let's go to where you are voting pro. Contention 1. Grant stands up here and does some awesome stuff talking about the terrorism stuff. However, he completely misses the internal link to both the India-Pakistan relations and the U.S. power projection. I don't care if terrorism goes down a bit. In the end, these drones allow us to withdraw, and that is going to not only reduce that separation, or reduce the confusion between like aid workers and military, which is the key internal link to India-Pakistan stability, and is going to end up preventing even the scenario for potential like Pakistani attack on its neighbor India. But additionally, it allows us to withdraw. It allows us to replace our troops in Afghanistan with drones, and that ends up allowing us to have power projection, which Thayer in 06, who is a really great source on this, is going to say is actually the key way to prevent any type of major terrorist attacks.
Why you're going to be voting nay in today's debate is because of the terrorism argument. The only link to all of the offense on the pro side of the case is that they are trying to show you that there is a decrease in terrorism because of drones. But we have empirically improved it on our side, and all of Grant's evidence that I'm about to extend shows why drones are actually increasing, not decreasing terrorism, and you can sign your ballots right there. So let's talk about these arguments specifically. In response to their contention 1, you can extend the Byman part and extend the 80% increase in IED attacks. Grant has drone attacks, and the Johnston study, which you can extend all of Brand's indicts to, is not showing a wide range of information and empirics. Not only when you read the Johnston card does it tell you that they're not even sure that there's an actual correlation or causation, but more importantly, the Johnson sample size is smaller than the Jordan sample size, which you can also extend from Brand's speech. But they're also trying to claim that this decapitation is another reason why they are going to be decreasing terrorism in the region. We have shown you that they are not proving decapitation, and more importantly, this lethality that Miller brings up in his last speech, there is no real-world decrease in lethality that they are showing in any cards throughout their case. So until they can come up and read one of those cards about lethality, and I'm not talking about one of these CNN or MSNBC cards that they keep reading, but like an actual academic study like we're citing in our case and Grant's continuing to extend, you are going to be voting on the fact that terrorism is decreasing, or excuse me, is increasing because of these drone strikes, not the other way around. But the most important problem that Miller makes in his last speech concession is saying that Grant does not extend any of the Yemen arguments. That is entirely false. Grant extends the argument about the fact that the only reason that the Yemeni pipeline was bombed was because of American drone strikes. So Grant and I are not only showing you that drone strikes are increasing terrorism, but showing you that an entire country's infrastructure has been destroyed because of drone strikes. You can extend the Arab Times card saying that there has been prices of drinking water 202% increase, and all of these reasons that make Yemen unable to survive. For these reasons, vote.
Okay, just vote. Ready?
She has TV.
Oh.
Right. Yeah, started.
Yeah.
I got it. I got to watch it. That's the question.
All right, you know that there are multiple Johnston studies.
Yes.
Okay, so the Johnston study you say is not causal. Is that the one about decapitation or the one about like
Both.
short-term attacks?
So if you read both.
No, right, both of them do not, but the one that we're talking about with decapitation does in fact prove that it is.
He says that it's a weak link. I can read it to you.
Okay, that's
In both of Johnston's studies, he
Johnston's
uses the word
dedicated his life to
cautious.
proving that decapitation is effective, and he's proven like the causality.
But in both of
Not
Johnston's
really.
studies, he claims that we should be cautious about holding all of his arguments
Okay.
because there's
And
no
also,
guarantee.
can you show, like, because Johnston's analysis on lethality was done in 2000 on organizations before 2001, correct?
No, Johnston's analysis on drones affecting lethality was done from 2008 to 2012.
And which study are you saying?
That one is.
That's the one where he
Johnson.
literally says in his conclusion that he can't prove causal link. I'm talking about the
No,
one
it's
that
that
Mr.
he's
Miller
not going to
extends.
make strong causal claims. That doesn't mean he can't make.
He literally says that there's no causal.
But let's move on to
He
something
literally
else. Can we
says,
talk about Yemen?
no, you're conflating two studies. You're like, well, I have this other magic study that's
Right.
out there. But that other magical study is not responding to the AEI.
The study that you're quoting specifically says this may or may not be indicative of drone strikes causing militant activities.
Okay.
Like,
Okay, let's
quote,
actually talk
may
about
or
an
may
issue that's
not
going to be important in the round as well.
Well, your only evidence about a decrease in terrorism
No,
is kind of...
because
No.
the Yemen argument that you're basically saying is like Yemen is going to hell in a handbasket. Where do you give any analysis that says that like these problems
Did they, like,
did not
interview-
exist before?
Did they like
That's-
interview the suicide bomber and
Oh.
find out that he did it because of drones? Like,
They
how do they-
say they attacked a pipeline.
They...
All of the big impacts you're reading of like increase in like price of food and stuff like that. All of those are something to consider.
Wait, let's just talk real quick. Let's just talk. Actually, they did say that was the reason to the news source. Secondly,
How?
the impact...
He died.
Even
Suicide bombing. It wasn't suicide bombing. You can blow up a pipeline without killing
But Miller, even if you're going to grant us that there's like that we can prove that there's been a decrease in access to food and water and gas, would you not agree that those are priorities
Well, wait,
to
time out. First of all,
survive?
those were due to the Civil War. Second of all,
No.
wait. Not only is
Our
that
evidence says those were because the pipeline
not
blew
only is
up.
that true, but the fact that okay,
Where does our evidence say that? It says
Drones were
because
big
the pipeline
tanks
blew up,
for-
petroleum
Look.
prices increased 900%, which made it harder for them to pump water out of wells.
one pipeline.
Do I
Really
see
quick.
evidence about this?
Okay.
You read no evidence.
All right, really quickly.
No evidence.
Are you telling me that absent drones, a terrorist has no motivation to attack?
He literally says, you killed my children, so I'm going to blow up your
Why can't? Why? Okay, first of all, couldn't like his children have died
That's
otherwise?
argument where we talk
Second of
about
all, couldn't have happened for other reasons. Like maybe he
He
wanted to
says
attack
the
reason.
because he's a terrorist.
Oh.
Because that's what terrorists do.
Abe, of course there are reasons other than
You're
drones,
making it
but
worse.
our
Oh, okay.
argument is that drones are one of the main reasons
But
and
not-
drones
okay,
are
it's
increasing
necessary- it's-
terrorism, and they were the only
Okay.
reason in response to the Yemeni pipeline.
It's not a necessary condition though, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Unfortunately, a lot of this debate has focused on terrorism, and terrorism increasing and terrorism decreasing, and what drones have caused, but the problem is this debate is essentially irresolvable. Both of us have very good statistics on either side. We have Johnston, we have Byman, we have a lot of other people, they have a lot of other authors. We also have correlative statistics that go both ways. So where do you make your decision? It's not going to be on terrorism. The first reason you're going to vote affirmative is going to be off of power projection. He is non-responsive to the Wall Street Journal evidence, which indicates that the United States military is going to decrease the amount of troops, and we need to increase the amount of drones to compensate. The Wall Street Journal evidence says that we're increasing the amount of drones by 30% in order to do this. This retains our power projecting capability according to that same evidence. The internal link here is not a decrease in terrorism. The internal link here is that the United States wanted to decrease its troops because they felt that we were overstretched, so they compensate with drones. What is the impact? Well, fortunately, it's bigger than terrorism. The Talbot evidence we read at the bottom of the first contention indicates that we could literally solve genocides with this kind of thing, because the United States is overstretched militarily. We can't go in and intervene in a humanitarian fashion in a lot of countries, but thankfully, we have drones which can now allow us to power project, which is much more important than terrorism. But if you want to look to terrorism, let's look first to Yemen. The terror evidence I read indicates that Yemen didn't collapse. Why? Because Yemen had drones at their disposal from the United States while they were invading their south, which allowed them to decimate these terrorist organizations. The evidence says that drones were crucial. He says that, well, one terrorist attack caused all of these increases. The problem is those increases are in prices and a lot of things are all purely correlative, and they're almost all attributable to the civil war that was occurring during the time period, so you're not going to be evaluating that. But even if you want to go to conventional terrorism, keep in mind that we have the evidence that says that lethality declines substantially when drones take out important bomb makers and things like that. He is non-responsive to the fact that these terrorists cannot train anymore. They don't have the training camps, which is why MSNBC says that Al-Qaeda is no longer carrying out a mass attack. Thus, we urge you to affirm. Thank you.
Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan is the order.
Wait, can you repeat that?
Yemen, then Afghanistan, then the Pakistan.
Okay.
Actually, we'll just go to the global overstretch argument. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So what, can you repeat the word? I'm sorry.
So, global overstretch, Yemen, and then just like general increases in terrorism. Comments? Ms. West? On the overstretch argument, he doesn't respond to two things. First, the only reason that we're there, causing us to be overstretched, is because of terrorism. We're increasing terrorism. We literally make the argument, in case, the reason that we say we control the internal link to the argument is that the only reason we have to be there is because of terrorism, so if we're increasing terrorism, we're causing more overstretch. That's the easiest way to vote for us. The overstretch, the reason we have to have troops there is because of our presence. The reason that there's terrorism is because of our presence. That's been our advocacy throughout the entire round. Like, literally the first thing I say in the rebuttal. So, if we prove an increase in terrorism and lives lost, we're going to be winning. And more importantly, this argument doesn't translate to a single impact or live, which is like what we're talking about. Like, he doesn't get there at all. So, go to Yemen. He says, well, we were able to push them out and that they were crucial, but remember that's according to the news source. Then we read the evidence that says the reason that we have to fight them was because it went from hundreds to thousands. Once again, this has been our fundamental argument. Drones cause the problem. They necessitate themselves, which perpetuates the problem and increases the lives lost. So at that point, we give you the pipeline analysis, which says the reason that you saw a 900% increase in petroleum was probably because you blew up their oil pipeline. That's not correlative. That's causative. And it happened because of drone strikes. He doesn't extend any of the uniqueness arguments that he's making in the Grand Crossfire in the final focus. Don't go there. You can extend the bottom piece of evidence that tells you this is literally a threat to the world at large. Then go to the arguments. In Afghanistan, from 2010 to 2012, we saw an empirical 80% increase in IEDs. This is the only number that is quantified within 1,900 more troops dying. In Pakistan, he just says, well, okay, look, we have some other statistics talking about lethality, but remember, he doesn't actually prove that's happening in the real world. We give you the only real world statistics. So extend Bergman, which specifically tells you the part he cites, that it went from 150 to 1,916. He says, well, look, I've got this 50% decrease, but that was only in 1 year. We're giving you the long-term trend. More specifically, we give you the evidence after that says from 2010 to 2012, when we decreased drone strikes, we saw a decrease in terrorism. In Afghanistan, from 2009 to 2012, you saw a tripling in suicide bombings. You saw an 80% increase in IEDs. The only thing you see in the real world when you increase drone strikes is an increase in terrorism, more lives lost. They have no real-world tangible impacts. If you're voting off lives, which is what we're voting on, we have the only quantifiable link to that. Theirs is unquantified.
We asked our students to vote and help us make the decision. The student vote was 17 to 12 for the con, and the instructor vote was a 4-0 for the negative. That was a fantastic round. Great job to both teams. And thank you.